Now, the Metropolitan Police have been criticised for telling a Jewish woman that swastikas need to be taken into context after she complained about the Nazi symbol being used in a pro-Palestine march on the banners in London yesterday. Here's what happened.
You need to walk with me because I can point these people out to you. And again, I was told when I asked that a swastika was not necessarily anti-Semitic or disruptive to public worship. That doesn't seem right to me.
Everything needs to be taken in context, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's a context of hate. But why does the swastika need context?
What exactly are you confused about?
What I'm confused is how you don't, in what context the swastika is not anti-Semitic. This is what I want to know. Because again,
I suppose to some, I don't know how everybody would feel about that sign. That has happened. I'm here working to the Bronze Commander, and it is not my responsibility, unfortunately, my role, to walk down the road.
Have the Metropolitan Police just been caught in the middle? Are they struggling to police these marches? Yesterday was the 11th pro-Palestine march to take place in the capital since October. So is the Met Police fit for purpose? Joining me now is musician and podcaster Winston Marshall. Context needs to be included when thinking about a swastika. It's not normally a point you'd imagine someone making, is it?
Well, I think this particular example from this weekend's protests, it actually isn't as shocking as some of the other things that happened this weekend. So it might be worth just examining some of those things. It included a man shouting that proudly and smiling that he supported Hamas. It included many people pointing and screaming at the pro-Israel march that was happening also in London, saying that they were murderers and they were explicitly anti-Zionist to those people. There were kids singing Houthis, Houthis, do us proud, turn another ship around, as well as Palestine, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. These hate marches, which, as you said, there's been 11 since this horrible war began. We're nearly at 6 months into this horrible war, which is worth remembering. A horrible war, which, of course, important for context, would be over if Hamas would release the 134 protesters and themselves surrender. I have witnessed a few of these. On October 9th, I went to the Israel Vigil on Whitehall. And it was a very solemn and despite very bleak and sad time, it had a sort of a wonderful camaraderie amongst people mourning. That evening on the tube, I came across a bunch of people who had been at the Israel embassy celebrating. And of course, your viewers will be aware, they'll have seen the well-documented footage by great photojournalists like Stuart Mitchell documenting that evening where people were on their knees praising Allah Akbar, were setting off green and red flares. And I myself was confronted with one of these people on the way home. These are anti-Israel marches. They're not pro-Palestine marches. Now, I know we want to talk about the police. I just want to say something I think is quite important, because it's quite useful, something that's brought up about a week ago. YouGov did a poll of the country, and they asked, do you think the Hamas attack on Israel in early October was or was not justified? Only 5% said it was justified. So yes, we are seeing every week, well, it seems like every weekend to me, these sort of marches. Okay, actually, it's a minority. It's a big minority. It's 3.3 million.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that we should talk about, is that people will say these protests are largely peaceful. And in a sense, it's the bits that aren't that require the focus, rather than trying to paint that as the wide picture. The question about the police, regardless of how small and how few in number these events are, why do you think the police are doing nothing?
Well, almost worse than nothing. There's an example. There's a man, an Iranian man called Niak Gorbani. You might remember him. About 2 weeks ago, he was assaulted for holding up a Hamas is terrorist banner. And the police, instead of arresting his assaulters, arrested him. Now, this weekend, the same thing has happened. He was assaulted again, this time rather more violently. You can see his full report is on his Twitter feed. And again, the police arrested him.
But again, you're just telling me things that happen.
Go.
The question that I'm trying to get to is what's the motivation? Do you think the police are afraid to act because maybe their actions would have further consequences they don't want to deal with?
It's a good question, and I obviously can't read inside their minds. I would say it's a pretty impossible situation for them. They're underfunded. They're badly supported. They've got terrible quangos behind them, like the College of Police. They're not given good directions. They're given bad directions. Sadiq Khan, who is the police and crime commissioner, has been absolutely dreadful and done nothing. In fact, him and the Met Commissioner, Samat Rali, have the rather horrendous legacy of presiding over London's police and crime, whilst we have record anti-Semitism surging. I can't tell you exactly what's going on inside the police. It's rather thankless. But what's very troubling is how easy it is for them to arrest some people like Niak Gorbani, but then completely turn a blind eye to the openly anti-Semitic people. It doesn't add up, and I think people see that.
I mean, I seem to remember the police said he wasn't arrested for holding up the placard. He was arrested for a previous altercation. It's the newspapers that put those two things together. So I suppose if you dig down deeply into all of the individual stories, that's where the information truly lies. The general theme that we're trying to get to is, why do the police not do anything? Or as you say, they do things. We hear stories of people being arrested. They boasted, possibly, of the number of arrests over the weekend. But still, it seems to be letting people getting away with things that ordinarily you think should be stopped.
They might have said that. They've said several things, and for some reason they're putting a lot of time into their Twitter feed, the Met Police, and quite regularly getting community noted, because the evidence is quite clear, and photographs and videos from what actually happens get posted. So it's not exactly clear that the Met Police are being totally truthful about what's going on.
Winston, we've got to leave it there, but thank you very much for that. Winston Marshall, I should say a spokesman for the Met Police, said, "We are aware of an online clip from today's protest in central London showing an interaction between an officer and a woman, during which there is an exchange over concerns around protesters displaying offensive banners, including swastikas. The online clip is a short excerpt of what was a 10-minute conversation with an officer. During the full conversation, the officer established that the person the woman was concerned about was already arrested for a public order offence in relation to a placard. The officer then offered to arrange for another officer to accompany the woman, identifying other persons concerned amongst the protesters, but unfortunately they had left."